ado, I will introduce Miss Nimisha. So, Nimisha has a background as a functional medicine nutritionist, is a published scientist, a guided meditation leader, and former tech founder. You've worn many hats, Nimisha, and you are dedicated to helping people find their truth through nutrition work. And so we'll dive into your passion behind food and the intersection with mental health. But I do just want to say that one thing you really advocate for, Nimisha, is that your work is research-based, but also intuitive. So with that, tell us a little bit about your personal journey and how you got into nutrition.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you. I was actually on my way to medical school, and in college, I encountered a lot of anxiety actually, and it triggered something called irritable bowel syndrome. And so a lot of you might be familiar with the IBS. And it just would cause a lot of issues for me socially, but I just physically. And I enrolled in one of the very first studies about IBS, and this is over 20 years ago, at UCLA, and it was all about the mind-body connection. And so from what I got out of participating in that study was that, you know, our actions have a lot of impact on how our health is. And so from there, I got really interested in actually nutrition. And I switched gears and I decided to study Ayurveda and more holistic health and nutrition. And so along the way, this is how I got into it. And in terms of mental health, I've struggled with depression, really severe depression. And anxiety seems to be always there in the background. And I've also found a lot of help and healing through the work that I do, with nutrition, but also lifestyle techniques.
Thanks, Nimisha. Yeah, love hearing a bit about your background. And so, maybe a good place to start is the gut-brain connection. Can you explain the gut-brain connection and how it impacts our mental health?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. And so the gut brain, it's something that has really come to the forefront of science and research in the last decade and a half. And it's very complex, but I'm going to explain it in the most simple way. So our gut, which compromises of when we say gut and when in relationship to like the gut microbiome, we're really talking about our large intestines. And so from our gut to our brain, imagine there being a highway system, and that highway system is called the vagus nerve. And there are actually more lanes going to your brain from the gut than there are lanes going from your brain to your gut and to the rest of your body. So we are connected, and our gut is able to send signals through the vagus nerve and through other neurons and channels to our brain, signaling what's going on. And then our brain will react to that. And this is happening all of the time. And we have inside of our body called the human gut microbiome. And that microbiome consists of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and pathogens. And all of those words sound like they're bad, right? Like, oh no, we need to take an antibiotic or antiviral. But actually we don't, because they're the good guys. They're on our sides. They want us to survive so they can survive. And so these are what our microbiome does. It does so many fun things, like essential functional things like help us digest food. So there's bacteria that helps us digest just protein alone. There's bacteria that helps us digest fats alone. and carbohydrates. But then the microbiome is also responsible for our immune system. About 70% of our new immune system is in our gut, our stress response. And what's so fascinating is that 90% of our serotonin is actually produced in our gut and not our brain. And so serotonin, as you may know, is the feel good hormone. It's a mood booster. And if you have ever taken SSRIs, they are serotonin boosting medications. And so it actually, it's all produced in our gut. And before, a long time ago, we used to think it was all in our brain. And so our gut, in so many ways, plays an intricate role in our overall function. But in terms of emotions, because we have serotonin that's being produced, we also have dopamine that's being produced and GABA, but also other hormones, like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and thyroid hormones are being produced in our gut. And these are all modulators of how we feel.
That's very illuminating, Nimisha. I had no clue that 90% of our serotonin came from our gut, versus our brain. That's staggering. And so let's talk a little bit more about simplifying gut health, because I mean, your background is science, right? And so you're throwing out quite a bit of names. And yeah, we really appreciate your expertise here. For someone new to the concept of gut health, what are some simple or approachable ways that they can start improving their gut microbiome tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what really the emphasis from the gut, that background I just gave, that emphasis is that we actually have a lot of control on how we feel just through the foods we eat. And so we can actually eat in a way that makes our gut healthier and stronger. But how do we do that? What are the foods that nourish it? And so our gut microbiome loves fiber. It loves the probiotics and anything fermented and cultured. And so we really want to nourish our guts by eating enough fiber. We've all heard about fiber being good for our bowels, but what fiber actually does, it contains the nutrients that feeds our microbiome, the prebiotics. So and I'm not saying go out and get some Metamucil. What I'm really saying is that we should really focus on eating more vegetables, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower. Some of the top foods are like onions and garlic, but if you have, IBS, those might not be the best foods, but then you can also eat whole grains, fruits, especially berries, and fruits that are like low in sugar but just fibrous, are like mangoes are also really great. Bananas are really great. So these are some foods that you can eat, just starting to strengthen your gut and actually feed that. And then, like I said, all cultured foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, anything that's pickled. Sourdough bread is amazing for our gut microbiome too, as long as it's like that traditionally made, like homemade, that it takes like 24 hours to make the bread kind of sourdough. That can be really great.
Okay. Yeah, so fiber and cultured foods, two top ones.
Two top ones, and then, staying hydrated too. We need our water. Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Um, what would you say to someone who is on a budget? Because you mentioned, the sourdough that 24 hours. For some of us, maybe we don't have the time to really like invest in, cooking our own foods so much, or we're on a budget. So some of these things we need to be more mindful around. What would you say for someone budget cautious? Yeah.
Yeah, you always start small and start where you can. I really recommend just starting with the vegetables, and it's Actually, time-wise, it's not that it doesn't take that long to pickle your own food. You could do like, pickle your onions and leave them in a jar for like 2 weeks and then eat them. And that's relatively inexpensive and also not time consuming. It could probably just take 5 or 10 minutes to do it. And there are lots of recipes online. For I say you can also just, yeah, again, like think about when you go to the grocery store, like prioritizing the vegetables over maybe some boxed foods. And those sometimes vegetables can be a lot more um, sustainable and also affordable than like a box of cereal. So making choices like that. You can also just like go visit the farmers market. I know my farmers market is actually like 50% more affordable than the grocery store right now. And it's a small farmers market, but there's a huge price difference in the vegetables. So if you could do that, I also love, like this shared economy kind of. So a lot of times I get lemons from my neighbors, and a lot of times, during the pandemic, this beautiful thing started where people started sharing sourdough culture with each other. And so maybe you can have someone else make bake bread for you and you trade them for something else. I think there are lots of fun ways to get innovative with food. And also with all these online marketplaces, you can actually get really great deals on food, like using Thrive Market, using your farmers market delivery boxes. A lot of times it can make all the difference in saving money, time, and then boosting nutrients in your food.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Nimisha. I'll check out Thrive for sure. Um, can you talk a little bit about, so I know you mentioned like bananas and onions. Are there, if you were to pick like three top superfoods for your gut, and just brain health, what would you choose?
Blueberries are the first thing that comes to mind because blueberries are just an absolute superfood. So much so that I'm starting to grow blueberries on my deck. They're amazing. There's so many great studies. And the most fascinating thing about blueberries is that you just only need a couple of servings a week. You don't need to eat it every day, all day. Just a few servings make a big difference. And so again, like talking about affordability, sometimes getting them in large quantities and then freezing them when they're on sale, or um, you know, yeah, like even frozen blueberries are actually really great and more affordable sometimes. So definitely blueberries, but also all berries are great, especially like, blackberries, raspberries, but then there are like golden berries. There are a lot of types of berries. So exploring. One thing I didn't mention is that the more diverse our food, meaning the more new foods that we eat and have a different range of foods in our diet, that actually really strengthens our gut microbiome. And so maybe one day you want to have blueberries, but the next day you want to have raspberries, and then, alternate, or then have 3 different berries in a week. The second top food I would say are nuts and seeds. I like just having almonds, cashews, walnuts, but then like chia seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds. Those are absolute superfoods. They're full of healthy fats that nourish our brain and our hormones. And when we nourish our hormones, we're taking care of our feel good hormones too that keep us healthy and happy. And actually, nuts and seeds also contain fiber and lots of phytonutrients. And the third superfood I would say is this might sound so cliche, but something like spinach, a leafy green, because they're full of vitamin C, antioxidants, and full of fiber again, and iron, and all of the things that we need. So I would say those are my top 3 picks.
Yeah, thanks, Nimisha. I'm curious. what your stance is on like supplements and probiotics. So if we're not getting things from our foods, uh, do you have any wisdom to share on that? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, be very careful with supplements because there's a lot of stuff that markets, oh, this contains probiotics, and it's become such a big marketing term. So I do actually recommend probiotics for people to take, especially if you're not getting in your daily um, amount of like fermented vegetables or your cup of yogurt. If you're not getting that every day, then definitely you want to supplement. And so when you look for a probiotic, you want to make sure that it's high quality. So a high quality one is actually one that's shelf stable. So if it has to be refrigerated, that means there's more of a chance that the bacteria didn't survive transportation or whatever. You want to see that it has 50 billion CFUs. And you're like, what is that even? If you turn over the label of a probiotic, it'll say it. Usually only has like 3 billion or 10 billion. That's just not enough. Like then you would have to take like 6 pills. So to make it worth your money, make sure that it's at least 50 billion and it has 10 different strains. So again, that diversity, that variety. Um, Other things that are really, really good for as a supplement to take that's just nourishing our gut and that's really healthy for us is actually vitamin D. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D, and vitamin D plays a very important role in our mood regulation, especially when it comes to anxiety and depression. And so we want to make sure that we're taking vitamin D daily. And what you look for is just a vitamin D3. It's one of the most simplest, straightforward supplements you can get. And then I would say magnesium is actually another really important supplement for someone to take, especially if you're having mood issues, but also gut issues. But there are many different types of magnesium. So the one that is really great for your gut health and also your brain health is magnesium glycinate. It's Glycinate. And this one is especially if you have like gut health issues, it's really gentle on your gut, but it's great for anxiety, muscle relaxation, sleep. So you want to generally take your magnesium at night and just look for that glycinate form.
Very helpful. I was taking some notes, Nimisha. I hope you all were too in the audience. Um, so you gave us some practical tips on what we can eat, supplements, probiotics. I'm curious, your take on like the emotional side of eating. So, in our support groups on ShareWell, a lot of them do focus on mental health struggles like anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma. With that can come food cravings. And so I'd
Mhm.
love to know your take on that, and if there's any strategies that we can implement to overcome those cravings so that we can stay on a healthier path nutritionally.
Yeah, so emotional eating is a big part of eating. And we eat for many reasons, right? Because food reminds us of something. But oftentimes when we're struggling, we use food as something to help us numb our feelings or as an avoidant behavior, because like and I find myself doing this all the time. Like, oh, I don't want to write this one email, right? Like, not respond to this one email. So I was like, I'm just gonna go snack on something, and then and we distract ourselves a lot. And so I think what we need to really do is pay attention to that. Really become present. And the more present we are with our actions, the less likely we're going to do things that are mindless. So becoming present and um, understanding your triggers for emotional eating, like really like what triggered us. Like typically when I'm really angry, I don't eat. So anger is not a trigger for me. For me, a trigger is sadness and uncomfortable feelings of like sadness or grief. And so those are my triggers. For some people, anger is a trigger. For some people, any like we all have triggers. And so finding out what your trigger is like the first step in kind of stopping that behavior. I think pausing before we eat is really important. So let's say we just had a meal, but then now we're going to go grab something else. Like if we just took a deep breath, we could all actually take a deep breath right now. Let's just put our feet down, close our eyes, and take a deep breath. Okay. I feel better. So just like just that one breath, how did that feel in your body? And then ask yourself, oh, I was gonna go grab that food. Did I really need it? Sometimes we eat mindlessly because our food isn't nutrient dense enough. So we are still hungry and our body is still sending hunger cues. So, like let's say, and I'm not judging anyone, I'm just giving an example. So let's say we just have a bagel and cream cheese for breakfast. That's not a whole lot of fiber there. There's not a lot of protein there. There's a lot of carbohydrates and a little bit of fat. And so our body is still craving that protein and that fiber, the antioxidants from that meal. So what our blood sugar is going to do is go get really high and then drop, and then we're going to get hungry again. So if we have, let's say, only half a bagel for breakfast, but then also had a couple of eggs and maybe some spinach on the side or a spinach omelet, and then maybe some avocado or nuts and seeds, that's a more satiating and well-rounded breakfast. And we may not be hungry 30 minutes to an hour later, causing us to grab something. So one, it could just be like, hey, are my meals balanced enough and nutrient dense enough? Am I meeting all my goals? So then our body has stopped sending hunger. And then I think emotional eating is a very complex topic. And so we really want to get to the bottom of it, like finding our triggers. Like, are we really stressed, And if we're under a lot of stress, what else can we do? Can we go for a walk? Can we sip a nice calming tea, like a chamomile tea? Can we do a breathing exercise or just stretch our body, can we diffuse the stress in that way instead of just with food? Another really important technique that I teach is actually just keeping a very simple food journal. And again, a food journal, if you don't have a history of eating disorders, and that's not going to trigger you, but like very simple. And in this food journal, all I want you to write down is what you're eating, not even quantity or anything. So you could just say bagel. And then I want you to write down how you were feeling before you ate that bagel. And I want you to check in like half an hour later, and write down how you're feeling after consuming that bagel. Did your energy go up? Did your moods change? Do you feel calmer? Like check in with yourself and do that exercise for about 3 to 4 days throughout the day, even for your main meals, like your breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, anything you're munching on. It's going to be very enlightening on why you eat, what you eat, and how we respond to our stresses and our triggers.
Yeah, thank you, Nimisha. Before we go into the Q&A, I have a question to piggyback off of that. So I know that you do coaching for nutrition. And so for your clients, when they come to you, and you just mentioned a tool of like a food journal, what's kind of the first or second step that if someone is really trying to do a nutrition overhaul, right? But they're trying to start with baby steps. What would be like one or two of the first steps?
I always say focus on one meal of the entire day to be your quote unquote perfect meal, And so I usually start with breakfast, and because breakfast kind of sets the tone for the day. And so I always say, let's not worry about lunch. Let's not worry about the snacks. Let's not worry about dinner, but let's start with breakfast. And how can we improve your breakfast? And then so I'll work with a client on just improving their eating habits in the morning and setting them up with like a meal plan. So if you're not working with someone and you want to do this on your own, get like a meal planner and write down every day for the just for the week what you want to eat for breakfast and how can you make sure you got your protein, you got your healthy fats, and you got your vegetables and your carbohydrates in there. And just focus on the breakfast. The second thing I would say is start taking a high quality multivitamin overall. And so we start meeting our nutritional deficiencies that can actually give us more energy to maybe cook later on or go grocery shopping. And if we start feeling, if we are deficient in vitamin D or magnesium, we start kind of meeting those needs. So then we can divert our bodily energetic resources elsewhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. And Nimisha, I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So I know from working with you that you have ADHD as an experience within your family, and
Mhm.
that nutrition has really been impactful for yeah, for like some of the symptoms. And so I'm curious if you can, because everyone's learning all of this new information. And kind of like, how has it worked for you with a mental health struggle that like what are the results that you've seen that can inspire people to be like, oh, this really works?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. So, my son has ADHD, and through his diagnosis, I found out that I also had ADHD, but I went 41 years without being diagnosed. And thankfully, I have been able to use nutrition for the last 15 years to manage a lot of my symptoms. And with my son, when he got diagnosed, I really did double down on our nutrition and everything I knew. And so it really also came back down to gut health. There's a lot of connection between the composition of your gut microbiome and having ADHD and other neurodivergent symptoms and qualities. And so I really dived into the research. And what I found with nutrition again is that you want to eat your omega-3 fatty acids. And so, you always hear about people saying, take your fish oil. But actually, let's get back to the source of the food, which are your healthy, your fats, your nuts and seeds, but also eating cold water fatty fish like wild salmon or grass-fed animal products, that those contain a lot of the healthy fats that are nourishing for our brain and our gut. Also, definitely reducing the sugar has helped so much. And because actually like refined sugar, like cane sugar or beet sugar, really disrupts our gut microbiome. And so I really am mindful of leaving sweet treats for really special occasions. And I've switched to alternative sugars like coconut sugar for my daily tea, my daily coffee, and I try not to have sugar in other forms unless it's a whole food form like fruit. Yeah, and what else has really helped? And just I think there are a lot of lifestyle practices too, but just like when we eat, like really ADHD and snacking is a huge problem. Or I wouldn't say it's a problem, but ADHDers use snacks as fidgets. So it's like just a way to keep busy. Not necessarily they're hungry, they're not necessarily eating emotionally. It's just a way for them to keep busy. So working on that habit and instead of like maybe having a chair band or something to stay busy with their legs instead of trying to feed themselves. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Nimisha. We are at time, and thank you for all of your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. Yeah, Nimisha, your topic is so popular. We have support groups on nutrition and mood and various aspects of physical as it relates to mental health. So if you haven't checked checked out ShareWell. I put a link to our support groups as well. And then, yeah, Nimisha, thank you so much. Everyone, stay in contact with her. You have her links, download her freebie. And I hope this encourages you to focus more on your nutrition this week and really chart the impact that it has on your mood going forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Nimisha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everyone.